Caller, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
I'm live?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Give me 10 seconds to lock the store. Hello.
Yes, we're listening.
Okay, good. Mahinja, turn off the radio, please. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that. I wanted to lock this store because I have a couple minutes to express something to the public. And so I don't want, while I'm doing it, people come to the store. Are still on?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. I'm Carlton DuPont. I'm not a voter. I don't vote. I don't back political parties anymore, like go on platforms and so, because I don't want to live that kind of life anymore after 34 years in politics. But I want the people of St. Kitts to listen to me just a couple minutes. I won't be too long because I'm mindful of other people. I have a problem with seeing Dr. Douglas becoming the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis again. And when I say a problem, I mean a big problem. The man himself, as a human being, I love him. But Dr. Douglas does not have the leadership skill to take this country to the level which is going now. He's going to pull it down. So the reason why I'm calling and making my voice heard is because I can survive under any condition. But I'm not certain if the balance of the population can. So I don't want, when any big problem happening in St. Kitts, they come to me and bawl to me because I wouldn't listen. Dr. Douglas is a big stumbling block to St. Kitts and Nevis. You see the IMF, you see all the projects that this government is doing around the island, like the Old Road Bay, the Island Main Road, paying off the IMF, surplus after surplus, 4 double salary in a row, money to Venezuela, helping the schools with food for the children in a bad time like now, including the parents and these kind of things. All the infrastructure that this government, the last government, because there's no government now, did, should have been done already. Why were they not done? It's because there were no money to do them. All of a sudden, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, don't forget Nevis, they tell Douglas, go and relax. We don't want you anymore. Timothy, Brantley, Sean came together, the greatest thing that happened in St. Kitts, in my opinion, and they have brought this country in such a way that other countries wondering now what we are doing. I'm not a politician. I'm only calling in. So I want to give a warning to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm not a prophet. Be careful with taking St. Kitts back in the hands of Dr. Denzel Douglas. It's not going to work.
Caller, I have a question. I have to challenge you on that. Yes, you that's your view in terms of him not being, as you say, fit for St. Kitts. But
go ahead.
Would you acknowledge that he did good for St. Kitts and Nevis in some aspects, in your view? Because you're saying he didn't do anything good. But St. Kitts and Nevis, for example, was one of those countries that basically eradicated mother-to-child transmission of HIV and AIDS and stuff like that, and the foundation would have been laid. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if I was a bright student, if I would have been able to give you an answer, but because I'm so dunce, I could answer you real good. The problem is, Dr. Douglas did well for St. Kitts in the interim, in the early part of his leadership. However, my brother, the way Dr. Douglas had the country in the last 7 or 8 years of his leadership, that is why we ended up giving away our lands, putting the country in the IMF hand, can't pay double salary, can't fix roof for people if hurricane blow off the roof. Mister, thank you so much for the question. We will always have discussion up to the election because I want to have a big say. Everybody gonna abuse me. Please allow me to read this thing before I go though. The Bible say a liar is dangerous. Too many lying may seem a convenient tool to obtain certain advantages in life. Yet, a practice of lying is a vice. What is more, a liar cannot gain God's approval. We are known to be truthful when we do things and other people know and see we are truthful. But if we are caught telling a single lie, people will doubt us. As a leader, Dr. Douglas have not told the people one lie. Dr. Douglas became a compulsory liar. And so that is a problem with him. Can you give me 60 more seconds?
Well, the thing is, we have other callers calling in, so you can call in again.
I will call in again. You see, my problem in life is that I can't get radio time even though I got money. I can't get to pay for radio time even though I got money. So hear this now. I want to thank you very much for accommodating me this morning. I'm excited. I feel real good about it. You have a good day. I have no problems with nobody though.
Thanks. Well, that caller had a strong view there about the opposition, basically. We go right back to the phone lines. Caller, good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
I'm well.
Okay, I just want to say, because I've been noticing that people of Thinkers and Nevis are making fake Facebook pages and then posting negative things against whether one party or the other. And I think they should cease and desist from doing that. We have 60 more days until Election Day. And I'm begging the people of Thinkers and Nevis, please go out and vote for whatever party. I'm not going to say vote for A or vote for B. Go out and vote for whatever party you decide to vote for. Let your voice be heard there at the poll. Now, that is the only thing that matters, okay? And I want to say, don't let the Facebook, the fake information on Facebook influence you and who you vote for. You are on the ground because no overseas voters are coming in. You are on the ground. Take a look around you and see what's meaningful. And I said the word meaningful progress that has been done, and decide from that. Don't let Facebook fake profiles decide for you on who you vote for. You take a look around and see, like I said, what meaningful progress has been done, and then you vote for your candidate. You have a good day, sir.
Caller, just before you go, what are some of the issues that you're seeing or you think would be the reason or voters should go, or at least for you? What are some of the issues you think will be the major deciding factor within the general elections upcoming?
Well, like I said, I got to look around and see. I mean, I may say A was good for me. Somebody may say B may have been good for them. But if I say, okay, there were road projects not finished, or there were cruise ship that came in, but at the same time, the taxi man them still suffering, I may say I would have think that agriculture, since they talked about it so much previously, would have been first and foremost on their list to get going, which is not going. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. I'm telling everybody, take an individual look around for yourself. Because I'm telling you, I've been watching, and there's a lot of information on social media, fake information on social media. And I don't want that to be the deciding factor. I don't want the people to use the fake information on social media, whether it's Facebook and WhatsApp or wherever. Don't use that fake information to make your decision. You're there. You're on the ground. You know what you suffering as a person, as a layman person on the ground. So let that be your deciding factor when you go to vote. That's all I'm saying to the people.
All right.
Because all of a sudden now it's 20,000 different fake profiles on Facebook and different social medias saying one thing about this party and one thing about that party. Don't let that decide for you who to vote for. Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
All right, thanks, caller. We go back to the phone lines. Caller, good. Okay, I guess we lost that caller. Back to the phone lines. Caller, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm trying to get in since Monday. I wanted to say something to the King when he hosted his program on Monday. And I'm going to say because it's very hard getting in on the airwaves now. So I'm going to say it, and I want you to pass it on to him. Now, Monday, he was having a conversation with Miss Henry, and I find it very annoying. That when Miss Henry is talking, he's talking at the same time. And it went on for quite a while. And that was quite disturbing for me. So, if the King is listening, I want him to refrain from that. Now, two other things. Concerning the overseas voters, everybody's saying, well, they're going to be disenfranchised and all of that. Well, may I suggest that the overseas voters can email their vote, And one other thing I wanted to say, but it's escaping me right now. Anyway, those are my concerns. But if the third one come back, I'll try and call in again. But I had something that I wanted to say, and it's escaping me right now. But anyway, that's my concern for now.
All right, thanks, caller. We go back to the phone lines to take this one call before we get to our guest. Caller, good morning. I guess we lost that caller. Well, we have with us in studio Chesley Hamilton, attorney at law. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, sir. And how are yourself?
Trying to stay safe. I'm well. But I'm trying to stay safe in this COVID situation.
I heard you brought us some good news, sir. That's why you dropped by our studios today.
Good news?
Yes.
It depends on the receiver. I mean, all news depends on who is receiving it. So if the audience receive it as good news, it is good news. If the audience receive it as bad news, it is bad news. Isn't that so?
That is true. That is true.
Yes, it depends on the audience.
Well, we're in the season of elections, and we find ourselves in uncharted territories that we have never had a situation like this happening before. That is, elections under a state of emergency, or even in a state of a pandemic. How do we go forward from here? And just if you could just break down the state of emergency and how that is going to impact these elections for us.
Well, to call an election during a state of emergency is not in of itself a problem. But to call a state of emergency, an election within a state of emergency without any ground rules as to how those elections are going to be conducted and where is the level playing field when you don't have a government of national unity, in that you do not have a united government based on the government and the opposition, or an interim government that is conducting an election after, let's say, there was a revolt, let's say after there was a natural disaster or something like that. You have an incumbent government having parliament, one branch of government dissolved, and the executive now being in place and in charge during a state of emergency, which gives the executive even additional rights over the individuals, over the machinery of the state, and over all facets of our lives by the suspension of Chapter 2 of the Constitution. And Chapter 2 of the Constitution deals with fundamental rights and freedoms, right? And it deals with the right to life, the right to personal liberty, the right and protection from forced labor, from inhumane treatment, and that is slavery and forced labor, inhumane treatment. It deals with the protection from the deprivation of property that is being suspended as well, right? It deals with arbitrary search and entry, so they could come and search your vehicle, enter your premises, enter all of that, take your from your property. All of the rights on the section on protections on the Chapter 2 of the Constitution are suspended. And the executive, which is now your government, your unity government, is large and in charge during a state of emergency with these rights, fundamental rights and freedom, suspended. The protection from the protection to the security of the law, the freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, freedom of association and assembly, right? And it goes on and on, and the right to and protection from discrimination based on race, political affiliation, gender, and all of these things. These rights are suspended during a state of emergency. And what takes place is the emergency regulations, the Emergency Act, Powers Act, and who is in charge of these? The Governor General in Council, meaning the Cabinet. And when the Cabinet, which is appointed by the Governor General and the authorities under the regulations, the power to make regulations and order, are all in the hands of the Prime Minister and his Cabinet and his colleagues within one party, trying to have an election that is free and fair and free from fear, I don't believe that the two can be married. It cannot be married. I am basically saying that an election that is free and fair and free from fear cannot be married with a state of emergency without any regulations of how to conduct the elections. It is wrong, it is wrong, it is wrong. And if we are going to have a free and fair elections, whatever pertains to one side should pertain to the other side, given their resources. Let them have their money or whatever so that they can do the same. But you cannot have all the cards, tie the opposition's hands behind its back, and say you're going to have an election that is free and fair and free from fear. And I know there are people who are going to say, well, that is what happened in 2015, and now it is happening in 2020. Well, it's okay. No, we are not in a race to the bottom. What is next? You're going to put the opposition in, what is next? After this election, and we have in the following one, you're going to put the opposition in jail and then have an election? We're not on that slippery slope. And we must stand up to protect our democracy and ask that we have elections that are free and fair and free from fear. Where are the observers? Are they going to come in? Are we going to open the ports so that the observers of the CARICOM and the OECS, etc., can come in and observe our elections? Or are we going to keep our borders closed? And we're going to allow certain people to come in with the permission of the executive, and certain people can't come in because they are with the opposition. This is wrong. It is wrong, wrong, wrong. And I'm calling on civil society to say it is wrong. What is the emergency that we are under? COVID. We have nobody in hospital. Or everybody has recovered. So therefore, we are going forward. What are the ground rules and the protocol to go forward? How could we assemble? How could we be associated? How could we express our views? If my views are contrary to how the government is conducting this, I could be charged with expression that is against public order, public morality, public safety, because all of those are the rights of the executive at this point in time. Because Chapter 2 of the Constitution is suspended, the Emergency Powers Act and the emergency powers regulations are in addition to the COVID regulations. And all of that is in the hands of the executive, the government, the unity government and its ministers. So they can decide what they want to do during the curfew because they are in charge. They could decide what they want to do during the shutdown days. They are in charge. The opposition and the individual people within the society, our rights are suspended. Our rights, freedom, even the freedom of movement. That is why you could have a curfew that restrict you to your house, or restrict you to your yard, or restrict you to an area. This is the way we want to conduct an election when there is no emergency that continue to exist. Our borders are closed. We have, by and large, have everybody recovered from the urgency and the emergency. And we are calling on the health officials to so say and so advise that the height of the emergency, we have passed the first stage of what could have been the worst. However, we must still be careful. We must continue to wear our masks, show social distance, hand sanitizers, and so on, while we conduct an election which is free and fair and free from fear. How could you conduct an election when you can't associate? So if I associate with Labour people, I could, and my right to associate is suspended. My right to expression, my right of conscience, my freedom of movement, all of these are suspended under a state of emergency. No one wants to explain to you what's a state of emergency. They'll tell you your rights are suspended, but they don't tell you that the executive is in charge. There are three branches of government. The three branches of government are the executive, which is cabinet, the parliament, which are your parliamentarians, both opposition and government, and independents, if there are any, and the judiciary. You know, it is because of a state of emergency which occurred in 1967, which influenced Chapter 2 in some way in our Constitution. And that is why the framers of the Constitution put Sections 16, 17, and 18 in the Constitution. Because during 67, when there was a state of emergency and the opposition were put in jail, and people were on the breadfruit tree and can't see a judge and can't get the case reviewed, and they didn't even know what they're charged with, the framers of the Constitution put those sections in the Constitution to say that within 7 days you must know what you're charged with. Your charges must be gazetted. You understand? It said that you must be brought towards a magistrate, a judge within a certain time, and your case must be reviewed every 3 months. Because if a state of emergency persists, you must be able to access the courts. Because the executive can be large and in charge while suppressing, oppressing, and dictating to the opposition. Never mind calling an election during that time when you have all that power rest in the hands of the executive. We are beyond dictatorship. We are beyond fascism. We are in totalitarianism right now. That is where we are. Because the church cannot assemble. You can't go and assemble to pray. That is where we are right now. And I'm calling on civil society. I'm calling on people within the unity government. I'm calling on Lindsey Grant. I'm calling on Sean Richards. People who demonstrated for electoral reform. People who got locked up so that we could have a free and fair elections. Not to say, well, they do it and we could do it now. We are not on a race to the bottom. What is going to be next? Have an election while people are in jail? No. We are not in a race to the bottom. We are about protecting our democracy, and all of these actions must be reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society. not where you can have an election. The opposition cannot even assemble, they cannot express themselves. If by even expressing myself here, somebody feels that I am saying something that is prejudicial, you hear the word? Prejudicial to public order, public safety, or public morality, I could be arrested under a state of emergency because these rights are suspended. And therefore, to have an election that's supposed to be free and fair, a contest of ideas and ideology and expression, when these rules and regulations are in place under a state of emergency that, by all intents and purpose, we have passed the worst. We have passed the worst. And if we have passed the worst, I am calling on all people with good conscience to ask the government to go back into Parliament, remove the state of emergency, so that we can have an election which is free and fair and free from fear, so that we could choose our parliamentarians and by extension choose the executive to take us into the next 5 years. Please, I'm begging. And that is what I'm here to speak about on Win FM today.
So you think the state of emergency is basically disenfranchising the opposition, or is not leveling the playing field in the sense that the government has the upper hand in terms of movement and the way they conduct their campaign, basically?
No, I'm not saying that the government have the upper hand. The government will have the upper hand even if they're the incumbent in a free and democratic society, because they still would have the call election. They still would have, the powers of the ministerial powers and the advantage of incumbency. This is not about advantage. This is about what the law gives them in a state of emergency. This is the law. What the law and the proclamation, and by extension the Emergency Powers Act and regulations, which gives you power in addition to the COVID proclamation, in addition to the COVID regulation, is that the executive can make regulations, they can make orders, they can authorize things, and all of that is in the hands of one side that is in this election. And that is wrong. There is no rules and regulation to govern this election that says that the opposition can keep meeting, they can assemble. They can't even decide to have a meeting. Because the right to association, the right to expression, and the right to assemble are suspended. And no one could tell me differently.
But to the point of freedom of association, the right to association, a question was asked recently whether or not there is any legal stipulation that draws a line to how long something like this can be in place to bar somebody from that freedom and right of association.
I need you to
because
continue.
The context is there should be some level of right to a citizen to say, hey, look, we can actually associate because it's a right. But at what point do you stop to say the government cannot continue to infringe on that right? Because the state of emergency is practically can be in place for the next 6 months.
What I'm saying to you, no one is saying that the state of emergency is illegal, you know. You can declare state of emergency and it is properly in place, it is in place. But what does a state of emergency, what it does? It suspends your rights and your fundamental constitutional rights in Chapter 2 of the Constitution. And in Chapter 2 of the Constitution is your right to associate and your right to assemble and your right to freedom of expression and your right to personal liberty, your protection from arbitrary search and seizure, your protection, your fundamental right for freedom of movement. All of those are in Chapter 2 of the Constitution. Chapter 2 of the Constitution is suspended in a state of emergency. Suspended. You don't have those rights. Those rights are the rights that are suspended. And how do you want to have an election where the executive is in charge and they can move? They are the legal authorized authority during a state of emergency. And when they have those rights and no one else, no other individual. So if you want to run as an independent, you got no right to begin to do anything. Your freedom of movement is curtailed. While the executive is large and in charge. The executive is in charge of the army. They're in charge of the police force. They can give the necessary directions and orders as they see fit.
Okay, at this point we have to take a break, but we'll continue with the discussion on the other side.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Fruta, taste the real Fruta, enjoy the real Fruta, refreshing juice of every day. Whoa, Fruta, drink the real Fruta, your favorite Fruta, the natural taste is Fruta. Fruta.
Your favorite fruit has got a new skin with real juice within. Drink the real Fruta. Enjoy the real joy.
Taste the real Fruta, enjoy the real Fruta, refreshing juice of every day is Fruta.
Fruta, juiced right.
Flo's new combo plan, the people's plan.
Combo, got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flow, come combo me.
Yes, there is no need for to force no more. Cause with Flow combo plan, you're paying less for more. Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Well, we're discussing the state of emergency with Attorney at Law Chesley Hamilton. Well, it seems as though the callers really want to share their perspective on this matter. So we'll take this caller before we go back to Mr. Hamilton. Caller, good morning.
Yes, hello.
Good morning.
Yeah. Now, I called in earlier and I said I had 3 points to make. The third point I wanted to make concerning the debate. Someone raised the concern about we having debate, and I think on Monday the King also mentioned that Tony has nominated herself for a debate between, the two prime ministers. In my opinion, take nothing away from Tony, but I would like to nominate Stephen Warner to host these debates if such would ever happen. Now, in my opinion, I think Tony, listening to her when she has had interviews in the past, I think she can be easily swindled, and this time debates are very serious, at least for me. So I would like to...
Okay, sorry, I really don't want to single out anybody in terms of their faults or anything on this particular program, but I understand where the caller was going, but our discussion right now is actually on the state of emergency as well as the upcoming elections and the impact that can have on the elections. Back to Mr. Hamilton. With the state of emergency, how do we... I'm not sure we can fix this problem immediately. How do we remedy this situation? Because we have just about 2 weeks to go before elections, and likely the possibility exists that there will be another 24-hour curfew. Possibility exists over the weekend. How do you think this is now going to impact one side over the other, in light of the fact that there's a level playing field from both sides, that they are basically switching to online campaigning?
Online campaigning is no different from radio broadcasting or sending your messages, your pamphlet. You you could be arrested during a state of emergency for if your literature, which is true, it does not even have to be false, is suspected of bringing public disorder, public prejudicial is the word, prejudicial to public order, public safety, public morality, and public health. If your literature doesn't have to be false, even if it's true, during a state of emergency, can cause you to be arrested during a state of emergency. That is the law. How could you have an election where the truth, if one side think that it's suspected of causing any prejudicial to any of that, you can't have a debate in that circumstance? Your freedom of expression, conscience, association is suspended. How could you have a debate where one person have all the weapons and the other person with a hand tied behind their back? It can't happen. It cannot happen in a free and democratic society. It cannot be reasonably justifiable because there are no ground rules. If they had come together and said, listen, we are calling an election. These are the conditions. You will be allowed to do this. I will be allowed to do this. We'll be allowed to do so and so. But you can't have an election where you are allowed to do everything and the other side allowed to do nothing. That is not right. It is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. Morally, it's against moral conscience, moral decency, and anything that is good. Where is the good governance in that? Don't jump up and say, well, the law gives me the right to do it, and I could do it. Again, I am going to say, we are a democracy. We are not on a race to the bottom and to the worst.
Are you saying that the elections is being masked, or elections are being masked under the state of emergency? Basically, it's just to get a direct response from you in terms of masking this to benefit one party over the other, one coalition over the other.
I am not even saying anything on that. I am letting you know what is the state of the law. The state of the law which we are asked to conduct an election cannot in anyone's good conscience or mind. If it smells bad, it's going to taste bad. If it tastes bad and it looks bad, it is bad. And I'm simply saying it is bad, it is wrong, it is stink, it is stink to high heavens. You cannot have a state of emergency, not in part of the country, because there's a disaster area. In all of the federation, the entire federation, while the executive is in charge of all the state authorities, organization, apparatus, machinery, and asks other individuals to have their rights and privileges suspended and to compete in an election like that. Thank God we have the internet. Because without the internet, how could you do anything? In the days when there was just radio and the government had the only radio station, you could imagine the total domination of this. We are able to use some technology to get around some of it. But I'm simply saying, even with that, by any measure of what is reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society, you must have ground rules of what is allowable. And I'm not asking for any of the opposition leaders to go and express the views so that they can be arrested and they can be nominated or any of that sort of thing. But I am simply saying that I don't want to be the moral conscience of this country. I'm not asking to be. But there was one person say, if I perish, let me perish. But truth must be told. I am not making up anything. I am simply telling you what the state of the law is. But even that could get me in jail.
A question. How does the suspension of that and we remaining under a state of emergency impact polling day itself, in that the right of association, the freedom of association, and our whole initiative or idea of social distancing? Because we know there are a lot of people either go early in the mornings to vote or they go late in the afternoon just before the polls close. How is that, or how do you see that having an impact on the elections?
What are the regulations to conduct the elections? The Elections Act? There are no new regulations. Oh, they are going to come by order of regulations made by the executive and proclaim further down the road as more COVID, under the COVID regulations? I am asking the government to go back to Parliament, remove the state of emergency, and deal with the regulations which we're going to do in conducting an election that is free and fair and free from fair, and have observers, CARICOM, OAS, all of those as well. All of our elections since, I think about 1995, 1993, have had international or regional observers. Where is the agreement for some such thing? Where are those things? We want to conduct an election, right? And we must conduct it with all the cards in our back pocket. And nobody is there to say whether it is reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society. The fact that you seek advice that says a state of emergency does not prevent you holding parliamentary elections doesn't mean that you have it, and you have it without any ground rules. Because the rights given to the executive under the Emergency Powers Act are wide and vast. They are vast. And any other regulations are made in addition to. They do not limit what is in the Emergency Powers Act and the Emergency Powers Regulation within Chapter 19.02. So Chapter 19.02, the Emergency Powers Act, the Constitution, Section 19.03, which triggers the state of emergency, and all the sections before it, which we call fundamental rights and freedom, which are suspended by virtue of that. All of those come into play during this time. Sure, we can have an election for parliamentarians, which is in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. But under what rules and regulations? Those rules and regulations, when Parliament is dissolved and Parliament is no longer sitting, are in the sole purview of the executive. Who is the executive? The executive team unity and its operatives.
Judge, jury, and executioner. Okay, we go back to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, good morning to you. Good morning to Mr. Hamilton. I'm listening to Mr. Hamilton, and he's outlining a lot of things that he believes is wrong with the powers that the executive have right now. What I'm not hearing him say is that they're illegal. So if they're not illegal, one, what can the opposition do to basically level the playing field, as he says? And two, if they're not illegal, then aren't they playing by the rules that are in place? I mean, if they're not doing anything wrong, well, if they're not doing anything illegal, then how can you say that what they're doing is wrong? So how can he mesh those two concerns?
All right, thanks,
That's my
Colin.
questions.
I am not here to tell you or to judge you in terms of what is right and wrong. Because I told you that even if I say something that is true and somebody feels that it is prejudicial to the public safety during a state of emergency, I could be put in jail. I could be detained. I could be charged. That is what I'm saying to you, you know. So where is the rules that is going to govern how we conduct an election? There is none. And that is the problem. I am saying we need the rules. How do you conduct an election that is free and fair and free from fear when the opposition and the individuals cannot even express themselves? Your right to expression is suspended. Your right to association, your right to assembly. There is absolutely no reason why you did not come in any regulation and say how this must be done, you know. You need to set the ground rules and not by your action and say, well, what I do, you could do. No. We must know under what rules these elections are governed. How are we going to do it in a state of emergency? My saying and my opinion is that there is absolutely no need for the state of emergency at this point. We have passed the worst. We have nobody hospitalized. We have nobody in quarantine. Well, we have nobody in recovery. The 15 cases are all rehabilitated or are all recovered. So, how could we, post-recovery, conduct an election by governing ourselves in a certain way in terms of social distance, in terms of wearing of masks, in terms of hand sanitizers, in terms of the... But what about the whole fundamental rights and freedoms under chapter 2 of the Constitution? How do you express yourself? How do you assemble? How do you associate? What is your freedom of movement? What is your right to personal liberty? Your right to property? What are they? When your fundamental rights and freedom are suspended. That is the state of emergency. And they're not just suspended and there is a neutral government in place. An interim government, a caretaker government. There's no caretaker government. There's no government of national unity. There is an incumbent government who is seeking a second term that is in charge of all the rules and regulations and all the powers of the state. While the powers of everybody else is suspended. Fundamental and constitutional and legal. Within regulations, within the Act, and within the Constitution. That cannot be right in a free and democratic society. We are past martial law, we are past fascism, we are past dictatorism, we are way beyond that, we are into totalitarianism. Because not even your right to assemble and pray in a church, not even that, you could adhere to. This is not about collecting tithes. You cannot even assemble to ask God guidance, because if you do so and you express yourself and people feel what you're expressing yourself to do is against public safety, public morality, or prejudicial, not even against, prejudicial too, you could be arrested. You could be detained by the executive. By the executive. Because an extension of the executive is the police force, is the army. During a state of emergency, it's even worse. I used to tell people when I was the chairman of PAM that if somebody complains that somebody is disturbing a meeting, the police may arrest them. But if the chairman say, go and arrest the person, the police was under the direction of the chairman of the political meeting in law. So he was duty bound to go and arrest the person. Well, it says something similar. In a state of emergency, the executive is large and in charge, the political directorate. Because your fundamental rights and freedoms are suspended. And I cannot remain silent while this is happening. I will be wrong. It will be wrong of me. I cannot do that in good conscience. Not in good conscience. I would not allow it. That is not what I got locked up for. That is not what I demonstrated for. When I started demonstrating for electoral reform and one man, one vote in this democracy, I wanted us to have a democracy that we can be proud of no matter who won an election or who was in office. And that still remains a quest of mine. I must be able to respect the government that is in office, that they were properly elected. One man, one vote in free and fair elections, and elections that are free from fear, free from intimidation by the executive or whosoever. How could you do that when the opposition have their hands tied behind their back and have no fundamental rights and freedom to even express themselves? I say again, literature does not have to be wrong or false. The law says it. The law says even if it is true. I could be arrested.
All right. We'll take another call. Caller, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to everybody here. I'm here listening to the lawyer there, and I neither hear nor there. And with all these things he said that is wrong, I would be enlightened if you could explain to me and to the public what they're doing wrong, what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Because he's saying that we don't have a problem in the country right now because 15 people in them, everybody's fine. What about if we open up the country to allow people to come in? Or should we just have an election and don't open up the country? Because I could remember Dr. Douglas is saying yesterday or the day before that they will not allow the people outside who want to come in to vote to be disenfranchised. My fear, I have no problem with bringing in the people in them, but my fear is that people can be coming from places like New York and those places there all over the world, England and so forth, where you have this thing is still. We are lucky here in the Caribbean, especially the St. Kitts. So I'm not a lawyer. I want to learn from you. So what the government must do, this is what I want you to tell me. And you're saying the same thing over and over and over, and I'm neither here nor there with it. No disrespect. Thank you.
We have another caller. Caller, good morning. Can you keep it short? Okay, I guess we lost that. Caller, good morning. Can you keep it short?
Good morning. I listened to Mr. Hanley and, Mr. Hamilton. And from my perspective, right, this is how I look at it. A caller said we should look around and ignore Facebook. I completely disagree with that. I said we should do both. We should get our information from all sources, and we should be able to pick sense from nonsense. If we can't, well, I'm very sorry for us. We're not ready yet, and we might as well have a dictatorship. We should also look back to the last election and look at what the government we elected promised to do and see if they have delivered. This government want to change the narrative now, but it was all about good governance, better governance, then the fact that Mr. Hamilton is here in the studio talking about an issue like this in the way that he's talking is testament to the government's failure to deliver. Right? The advantage of the government is obvious. And to me, it's abusing its power. How could you have a level playing field if the government monopolizes state media using spurious excuses to shut out the opposition, when it promised equal access by all parties? And finally, we should not just look around and look back. We should look to the future. Is this the kind of country we want to live in? Shouldn't we want a democracy where all voices contend and all are held accountable with equal protection under the law and equal opportunities to access the resources of the country? Isn't that what this is about, right? And the caller just now asked, what should we do? The government should have engaged the opposition early. I mean, we've been asking for weeks now, how is our electoral process going to look in the area, in the era of COVID-19? And the question has been ignored. How are we going to campaign and that sort of thing? The question has been ignored. And now, 2 weeks before an election, you're going to be telling me that we're discussing these things? That's ridiculous, right? They should have engaged the opposition and come to some agreement as to how the election, the poll, is going to be conducted. If we really wanted to include the overseas voter, and I feel that anybody who voted last election should be able to vote in this one as well, okay, once they're alive. And I don't know how you go about disenfranchising people or telling them they can't vote if they voted last time. But things could have been done. We have virtual everything nowadays. Things could have been put in place very early o'clock as to how the process is conducted, whether it's conducted overseas with monitoring by the opposition and the government or whatever. But it could have been done if the government was committed to a free and fair election. As it is in this environment, I don't know how we can ever have free and fair election. Okay, then.
Well, I guess that the first caller, the second caller answered the first caller, because that is exactly the measured approach that was necessary in how we go along. I just want to let people know that when I speak of, there is Section 17 of the Emergency Powers Act, which speaks to restrictions on publications of prejudicial matters, okay? And it says, no person shall publish either orally or in writing any, right, report or statement, and it says whether true or false, or exhibit any effigy or caricature. And it goes on. I just want to say to you, when I tell people, it does not have to be false. Whether true or false. This is the kind of restrictions and expression that in a state of emergency and in a political debate where one needs to advocate resolutely to the electorate, those sort of things are prohibited. So the fact that because it is legally permissible, you can have guidelines. If you could have COVID regulations, you could come and say, listen to me, these are the regulations upon which this election would be conducted. You will be allowed to do this, you will be allowed to do that. Not the fact that you, the executive, can do everything that the state now allows you to do and assume to yourself. You know, take up to yourself. You know, And then everyone else's rights are subject to suspension. I won't even say subject to you. Subject to suspension. And you must operate in that circumstances and conduct an election. And I just say, he suit you, he right, and I must say nothing, and we must say nothing, and we must say it's okay. That's the game. That's the playing field that we have to, under the pretext and the guise that there's a state of emergency. What is the emergency? COVID. What is the state of it? What is the evidence about COVID? The evidence is that on island, there is no COVID. Okay. That's the evidence. Let me just say this last bit. There is no evidence. So even if you decide you're going to restrict overseas voters or not, what about my freedom of movement within the island while COVID is no longer a threat in the worst of way?
All right. There you had it. That was Mr. Hamilton giving his, Mr. Chesley Hamilton, giving his take on the state of emergency and elections here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, now it's midday, so we have to break for the headline news, and we'll continue with voices at the bottom of the hour.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the Win FM Headline News. The Win FM Headline News is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tilly Wall with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Defense Counsel and former chairman of the People's Action Movement, Mr. Chesley Hamilton, argues that a free and fair election cannot be held under a state of emergency without any clear regulations about how the election should or would be conducted.
It is wrong, wrong, wrong. And I'm calling on civil society to say it is wrong. What is the emergency that we are under? COVID. We have nobody in hospital. Or everybody has recovered. So therefore, we are going forward. What are the ground rules and the protocol to go forward? How could we assemble? How could we be associated? How could we express our views? If my views are contrary to how the government is conducting this, I could be charged with expression that is against public order, public morality, public safety, because all of those are the rights of the executive at this point in time. Because Chapter 2 of the Constitution is suspended, the Emergency Powers Act and the Emergency Powers Regulations are in addition to the COVID regulations. And all of that is in the hands of the executive.
Mr. Hamilton, a vocal critic of the Team Unity administration, says the country should not engage in a race to the bottom.
I'm calling on civil society. I'm calling on people within the unity government. I'm calling on Lindsey Grant. I'm calling on Sean Richards. People who demonstrated for electoral reform. People who got locked up so that we could have a free and fair elections. Not to say, well, they do it and we could do it now. We are not on a race to the bottom. What is going to be next? Have an election while people are in jail? No. We're not in a race to the bottom. We are about protecting our democracy, and all of these actions must be reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society. Not where you can have an election, the opposition cannot even assemble, they cannot express themselves. If by even expressing myself here, somebody feels that I am saying something that is prejudicial, you hear the word? Prejudicial to public order, public safety, or public morality, I could be arrested under a state of emergency because these rights are suspended.
The government implemented a state of emergency to combat COVID-19. Curfews, restricted movement, and social distancing regulations are in effect. There is no official announcement at Newstime Wednesday about the rules of the road for this election in the present context. Nominations Day is Wednesday, 27th May, and Election Day is on Friday, the 5th of June.
The governing coalition Team Unity told the nation Tuesday night that the three-party alliance is stronger and will provide a safer future for St. Kitts and Nevis. The coalition at its virtual election campaign launch made an impassioned appeal for re-election in the June 5 general election. Those who made the case there included Prime Minister Timothy Harris of the People's Labour Party, People's Action Movement leader Sean Richards, and Mark Brantley, who heads the Concerned Citizens Movement.
So let's again, those of us who love this country of St. Kitts and Nevis, put our hands together, say unity has delivered, and unity will continue to deliver.
This Team Unity government has performed. And it is because of that performance of this Team Unity government that we have no doubt that come election day on June 5th, 2020, that you will return Team Unity to government.
Because when we came 5 years ago, you know what we asked you? We asked you to put your trust in us, to give us a chance. Now we have come this time to say, you have seen us at work. Give us another opportunity to continue the work that we started. Do not turn back the clock, because all of you know what was. Let us not go back. We are seeking to go forward. And the only team in this country that can take us forward is Team Unity.
According to Team Unity, its performance in government makes a solid case for another 5 years at the helm. Disagreeing vehemently is the opposition St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. The party's leader, Dr. Denzel Douglas, alleges that there won't be an even playing field this election.
We will be fighting this battle on an uneven playing field. As the government, it makes every attempt to rig the elections in their favor. Only today, it was reported to us that the supervisor of elections, Mr. Elvin Bailey, rejected presiding officers whom the Prime Minister believed to be Labour supporters.
And the answer to them will not come out now. We not come out now.
The real voters of St. Kitts and Nevis must make it known through the ballot that you do not and you will not accept the unprecedented low to which our nation has been taken in all areas and in all sectors.
That when we come down to Bastille, after election day, we'll be coming with 9, 10, and 11.
The Caribbean Community CARICOM has taken issue with the European Commission publication of a list of high-risk jurisdictions with strategic anti-money laundering and terrorist financing deficiencies. The region says this latest development as an attack on CARICOM member states. CARICOM says in a statement that it deplores the latest attack by the European Commission on the economic well-being of some member states of the regional grouping which were named in that list. According to the statement, these Caribbean countries will be subject to enhanced due diligence measures by European Union states. According to CARICOM, the list, which includes 4 CARICOM member states, was published despite the European Council in objecting to a list submitted for approval last year, concluding that the Commission's submission was, quote, not established in a transparent and resilient process that actively incentivizes affected countries to take decisive action while also respecting their right to be heard, end quote. CARICOM contends that the impacted countries were neither informed nor consulted prior to this month's publication of the list. In making its case, CARICOM says it should be noted that of the 4 Caribbean states included in the Commission's list, one has been delisted by the Financial Action Task Force since February 2020, while the other 3 member states had already entered into agreed action plans with the FATF. CARICOM is urging European member states to, quote, once again reject the Commission's proposal as callous and premature, end quote. The 4 countries blacklisted are said to be Barbados, Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago.
The opposition St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party is warning that it will not accept discrimination of its supporters, including those residents abroad who may wish to vote in the 5th of June election in the Federation.
If people from outside are going to come home as citizens, which they have the right to do, and they exercise their right to vote for the team unity, so too must citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis who would have come home and who would want to exercise their right to vote for the Labour candidates, they too must be allowed to exercise that franchise and thus vote for the candidate of their choice. So we feel very strongly, and we want to say it here, that we will not accept any attempt by this government to discriminate against Labour Party supporters.
Leader of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, Dr. Denzel Douglas. The SKNLP is also accusing the incumbent Team Unity administration of breaching the very regulations that it has put in place. Here's Deputy Political Leader of the SKNLP, Ms. Marcella Liburd.
Throughout the whole of this thing, the COVID-19 briefings were also used as a political platform for the government. And it's the same thing that they're doing with the state of emergency and the lockdowns. I'm sure many of you would have seen a video yesterday of Newtown Community Center where the Prime Minister and Patches Liburd were there talking to, I guess, their supporters. So many people in the room. I'm sure it had more than 40 people in that room. No social distancing, nothing. Yet they have regulations saying that you can't have social gatherings unless it's a funeral or wedding. I don't know whether it was a funeral or wedding that they were having up in Newtown. Probably a funeral. But the point I'm making is they are carrying out breaches of the very laws that they say, and regulations that they say they put in place, because the regulations are clear. They say no social gatherings.
How can citizens living abroad access their homeland or non-nationals leave the Federation during the COVID-19 pandemic? General Manager of the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport, Ellsworth Warner, addressed those questions during a recent National Emergency Operations Center, NEOC, briefing.
And the flights are now limited to specially pre-approved passenger flights. You would have been hearing a long time ago, as of the 26th of March, that we are no longer accepting commercial passenger flights. It does not mean that if there are persons on the island who are not really citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis wanting to leave the island, they cannot leave. We've seen quite a number of these persons left. They would have arranged flights on their own. And we've also seen a few arrivals of our own persons. This has been going on for quite a while and will still go on as long as the appropriate application for such is made.
So how do you get approval if you want to go or come?
Approval for this type or these types of operation can be received from the COVID task force through the management of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. In other words, you do not have to write directly to the COVID task force, but you can write to the CEO of SCASPER, who is Mr. Denzil James, and you can do so via email. His email address is Denzil, spelled D-E-N-Z-I-L, .James, J-A-M-E-S, at SCASPA, Sierra Charlie Alpha Sierra Papa Alpha, SCASPA. Funny language there, I don't mind. SCASPA.com. So Denzil.James at SCASPA.com.
The airport manager said emergency flights are also accommodated. The first election with state of emergency rules and possibly fear, if any so-called overseas voters, presents a novel situation for St. Kitts and Nevis. Pollster Peter Wickham told Wynne electors face unusual circumstances, but elections had to be called within 90 days of the dissolution of Parliament on Tuesday, 12th May.
This is a novel and a peculiar situation for several reasons, and I think that the 2 points you've made is one of them. We've not had a situation before where we've had an election during a pandemic. We've also not had a situation before where an election has been called during a state of emergency. So it's an unusual circumstance, but arguably the COVID reality is also an unusual circumstance that couldn't be planned for. The fact is that election has to be called within 90 days. The team unity has obviously decided that their chances are better going earlier rather than later. I mean, theoretically, they could stay until August. The presumption is that their interests are better served by going early. One would assume that this is a position that Labour would also support because Labour has been calling for the election a long time ago. I would imagine that they're happy that it has been called earlier rather than later within this term. So I think under the circumstances, the government didn't really have a whole lot of options on its plate. But this does say that there's a certain level of bravery to essentially be the first regional election that's being held under these circumstances, and we have to see how it goes.
So who benefits more in the current situation, the incumbent or the opposition?
Historically, national crises or disasters have always favored the incumbent. That has been my historic analysis of it in terms of Dominica, in terms of Barbados back around Hurricane David's time. And at other points in time, it seems as though the incumbent tends to fare well, unless, of course, the incumbent manages the project very, very badly. I don't have any evidence or anything to suggest one way or the other at this stage. I don't know whether they have done well or badly. But one would argue is that unless they have done very badly, it should help them and their interests. The one reality, though, is that it will make the election very different in many ways. One of them is that there will be no big-ticket rallies.
Will the absence or the presence of fewer overseas voters sway the poll one way or the other?
No major rallies, and that is a significant cost to both political parties, and that's something which will not be on the table. So it reduces the operating expenses for both political parties, so they don't have to bring in artists from overseas and do that type of thing to get voters on board. The other point is the overseas voters, and clearly this is something I think will favor the team unity, because the absence of overseas voters last election, you recall that Dr. Douglas said he brought in about 20 charters. That cannot happen in this election, and I think that 20 charters must make a huge difference in terms of the election result one way or the other. So my sense is that is a game changer for the current administration, and it does help their cause significantly.
As political campaigns heat up in a run of the elections, leaders of the Christian community are appealing for the exercise of Christian values. The secretary of the St. Kitts Nevis Evangelical Association, Erickson Cumberbatch, made a call in Tuesday's edition of Voices on Win FM 98.9.
We can be opponents without being enemies, and so we want people to know that we welcome all facets of the society, and we maintain that we are people, one nation under God, and that is what we want us to acknowledge. We don't think that we should wait until there's a pandemic or a severe crisis that we turn to God, but we should be looking to God daily, morning, noon, and night for His guidance, and we turn to His Word for counsel and direction, and that is our role, besides praying and interceding and ministering to physical and spiritual needs. And so throughout this season, especially as we're now entering the election season, we want to encourage our people to be very civil, to be very well-behaved, conduct yourself well. In spite of the fact you will have your persuasion, conduct yourself well, love your neighbor, be very courteous in your communication and your sharing. Even though you might be passionate about your persuasion, be very courteous and respect each other.
Canon P. Alistair Rollins of the St. Kitts Christian Council said, in his view, the church should not participate in partisan politics.
The church should be involved in partisan politics. I don't believe that clergy, preachers, should preach partisan politics, but I believe that clergy should always give guidance, both to government and to folks in opposition. Anybody who desires to lead its people, the church should be willing to give guidance to them. Now, in terms of the election coming up, the church councils will have a part to play, we believe. That is yet to be fully determined, but hopefully we should have a couple of meetings with the relevant authorities soon.
There is insufficient rainfall to support the consumption demands of the public, forcing officials to declare a water-related emergency. Low rainfall over the past 2 months has resulted in insufficient water to recharge the John Compton Dam. A water-related emergency means that people are now banned from using quality water for purposes other than bathing, cooking, and drinking.
Where you used to water your lawns, or use your hose to wash your vehicle, even for significant agricultural activity, that person should cease and desist from doing that until there is the level of rainfall has increased. WASCO is now moving back into a normal mode of operation. So it's a matter of conservation. So right now it's more or less water for the population. So a lot of activities or a lot of complementary activities that depend on water from Wasco, that persons should cut down on those activities.
Restrictions on non-potable water use could affect farmers who depend heavily on water for crops and livestock. The construction sector may also be impacted by the prohibition. However, Director of the Water Resource Management Agency, Jason Ernest, says farmers and manual laborers can abstract water downstream of Wasco's intake.
In a number of catchments, they're not really into a hydrological drought per se. So we're in a meteorological, agricultural, but in a hydrological drought is some of the catchment. It's not all the catchment because, you know, the profile and the characteristics for the different catchments around the island are different. So there is still water available downstream that ordinarily would go to the sea, but there is still enough water in some of them that abstraction can happen, and they would still have enough left for environmental flows.
Notwithstanding the water crisis, health officials continue to advise the public to practice regular hand washing to prevent contracting the COVID-19 virus. Moreover, the nation has to contend with the reopening of resorts and the approaching hurricane season. Program Development Officer at NEMO, Andrew George, says everyone needs to be considerate about water usage.
The Climate Adaptation Financing Facility, which gives small loans and for persons to purchase tanks and water storage, anything to be able to store water. And also water harvesting instruments so that you can then harvest rainwater for yourself. So persons can get that access to that. So for us at the national level, this is all the little pieces that we're trying to put together to ensure that at the end of the day, water is not only conserved, but people have enough water to meet their basic needs so that industry can continue, the economy can continue, and then persons have enough water to keep themselves sanitized and sanitary, because with COVID you need to make sure you do a lot of hand washing.
Officials continue to preach the importance of water conservation and investing in rainwater harvesting and tanks. The St. Lucia Met Service predicts that St. Lucia could see increased rainfall sometime in July. That means another 2 months of possible bone-dry conditions and empty taps. Anyone found in violation of the water-related emergency could face a hefty fine of $3,000 and or 6 months behind bars. Gina Filippi, HTS News Force.
Welcome to Philly After Dark.
As this travel and tourism video shows, Philadelphia is a food town no longer only known for its famed cheesesteak sandwich. Philly is going through a restaurant renaissance. It's become a top destination for foodies and home to some of America's most innovative and talented chefs. But the shutdown brought on by COVID-19 has stopped everything, and it will be particularly hard for independent restaurants to come back from the lockdown now in its 10th week. City officials have yet to say when restaurants will be allowed to reopen. Some have just given up. This week, 3 restaurants said they would close for good. And there could be a lot more to come.
Maybe 30 to 40% of the restaurants in Philadelphia may not be able to open their doors. That's a wild number. I can't imagine walking down the streets of Center City, Philadelphia, with 3-4 doors boarded up out of 10. We are in the hospitality industry is what adds to the richness and to the culture of our community. And we provide and represent hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, annual revenue to the city.
And it's not just restaurants. Philadelphia is a hot new spot for independent coffee shops as well. But now most of them are completely closed, with their chairs sitting on top of tables and the espresso makers sitting idle, not being used. At Hip City Veg, a plant-based restaurant, cooks are busy in the kitchen preparing their popular salads, Beyond Meat burgers, and organic tofu wraps. But with the dining room closed, trying to survive on takeout and delivery orders only has been a challenge. 250 employees have been laid off, and 2 locations have temporarily closed. For those eateries that can survive, hopes are high that they'll be able to return to the thriving, bustling dining scenes of before. Gabriel Zondo, Al Jazeera, Philadelphia.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
That was the Win FM Headline News, brought to you by KDP Enterprises, Caribbean Alliance, Carrie Brewery, CNC Trading, The Grange.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Till you walk with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Delia Walwyn, people you can trust.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
When is the last time that you've had lunch or dinner away from home? The ambience of Sweet Cane on Port Zante provides you with that touch. Sweet Cane daily specials include burgers, wraps, soup, and tasty seafood dishes. Sweet Cane also caters for events and special parties. Call our Sweet Cane hotline at 465-4345 or 665-7628. Sweet Cane, they've got the touch.
This is your local weather forecast brought to you by Sweet Cane. Local weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, valid up to 8 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, 21st May. Synopsis: some remnant but shallow moisture from a tropical wave that has moved west of the region will keep the chances of showers at moderate for the most across the islands today and tonight. An increase in moisture over the region overnight and on early Thursday morning will increase the chances of showers to high. Today's weather partly cloudy with a 40% or moderate chance of showers. Tonight's weather partly cloudy with a 40% or moderate chance of showers, then becoming cloudy with a 70% or high chance of showers overnight into Thursday morning. Winds are east-southeast at 13 to 26 kilometers or 7 to 14 knots. Seas 1 to 1.2 meters or 3 to 4 feet. Today's sunset 6:38 p.m. Tomorrow's sunrise 5:37 a.m. This has been your local weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, valid up to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Brought to you by Sweet Cane.
When is the last time that you've had lunch or dinner away from home? The ambience of Sweet Cane on Port Zante provides you with that touch. Sweet Cane daily specials include burgers, wraps, soup, and tasty seafood dishes. Sweet Cane also caters for events and special parties. Call our Sweet Cane hotline at 465-4345 or 665-7628. Sweet Cane, they've got the touch.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Welcome back to the second half of Voices here on WinFM 98.9. I'm your host, Jermine Abel, and as we would have done before the midday news, we were discussing the state of emergency and elections here in St. Kitts and Nevis with Attorney at Law Chesley Hamilton. But before we continue with the program, this at least for the second hour, we must acknowledge our sponsors, Courts, SL Hotspurs and Company, and Flow.
Why not stay in, turn off the alarm clock, and sleep some more on your perfect mattress from Quartz? For the widest range of mattresses from the world's best brands, the best value guaranteed. Shop today and let our sleep experts help you to decide on the best option to suit your needs. At Quartz, we don't just sell mattresses, we're offering you the best night's sleep. So, sleep in a little on your new mattress from Quartz. Quartz, bringing value home.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horseman's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss it. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
Welcome back. We go straight to the phone lines. Caller, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Abel.
Good afternoon, Miss Henry.
Man, I'm giving God thanks for another day. We hear all about the hurricane and the storm going down in India and Bangladesh, you know.
Okay, we also have, Miss Henry, we also have Mr. Hamilton with us here in studio.
Yes, my good friend, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton, what I am going to say now is not personal. Now, I did a course called, and I had a book. You must try and get it, Mr. Abel. It's called Rules for Radicals. RULES, Rules for RADICALS. Now, we are being played in this country, you know. Our people are very naive. Now, if you're a strategist, you got to choose a theme, a topic that would evoke anger or sympathy. Now we have heard terms about good governance, and now we're hearing about the state of emergency. And while it sounds good, because what he said on the base is good, is true. The only problem is the purpose and the objective. Because the truth is, both parties face the same thing. Now, if one was demonstrably showing a difference or an advantage, what Mr. Hamilton said this morning would make a lot of sense. And if he really believed what he said, is he encouraging others, if what he said, if he believes in it, to take action on it, and is he willing to defend them in a court of law? And as I said again, Mr. Hamilton is a strategist, you know. He's a political strategist. I have heard him and seen him on other stations. And other people talk about, integrity in public life and so. These are issues, of course. But it is the objective is to draw away support from the Unity Party towards the Labour Party. Plain and simple. This is about the church. Yes, just yesterday the church representative on Win FM saying that they have been meeting and they have been discussing and they themselves are working out the conditions under which they will meet. They were not going to be imposed upon them. And I have not heard of anybody, all of them on the internet, on the radio. So I have not heard anybody on the radio more than anybody else. In fact, all of them have access. Labour have Kiss FM. They have Freedom. They have others they could pay for, they are paying for. The same thing on the other side. So what he's saying would be true if there was a difference. So, Mr. Hamilton, I have nothing against you, but you are a strategist, a political strategist for the Labour Party. You are entitled to your rights. The Constitution gives you that right. But our people have got to be aware that we are being played. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Henry. We'll go back to Mr. Hamilton to respond.
We are all entitled to our opinions. And I am simply saying I have 2 degrees in political science. I'm a student of politics and political science. I have been a chairman of the People's Action Movement, and I have contested 2 elections in this federation. I have no difficulty in saying anything when it comes to policy and policy making or politics. The difference is that we have done all of that on one side. Ms. Henry cannot prove where I am a political strategist for anybody, because I've never had a penny from anyone in Labour to do anything politically. Never. Zero, zip, never. But I would say this much. What I could tell you is this. I come here to speak about the elections in an era of a state of emergency. And my legal training, as opposed to my political training, is telling me that I am at risk even if I speak the truth. I am at risk even when and if I speak the truth, because whether it is oral, written, once it's a statement and it's prejudicial to public order, public safety, or public morality, I could be placed, detained, and put under arrest. And the regulations allow that. And I am simply saying to you that where there is a debate for who is going to run the country, where there is an election that must be reasonably justified in a free and democratic society, governed by a constitution, I have a difficulty in expressing myself in terms of hard and reasonable debate, right? Where you have a competing of ideas, right? Under those conditions. I'm simply saying it is wrong, it is wrong, it is wrong. Ms. Henry, just in case you want to know, okay? I don't intend to vote for unity this election. I could tell you that much. But whether I am a political strategist for anyone, trust me, just let your conscience be your guide. And my conscience is my guide right now. I have learned from my good cousin who is a war veteran in terms of Douglas Watley, who said to me, Chesley, if I make a mistake 5 years ago, I must be man enough to correct it. And therefore, if I made a mistake 5 years ago in voting for Timothy Harris and the unity construct, because I'm a man of second chances, and if Timothy say he found salvation on the road to Damascus, right, I was willing to give him a second chance. But if I made a mistake then, I must be man enough not to say by me ain't gonna vote because I'm a PAM. I must be man enough to say to you, I have given you a second chance which you have squandered. And I do believe that I am not going to just sit idly by and do nothing, but I'm man enough to correct it and vote against you. So I could say that to you. I am not saying anything new. I am man enough to have said that to Sean Richards and to my cousin Lindsay Fitzpatrick Grant to their face. Okay? I am man enough to say that to my cousin Eugene Hamilton. I could say that to anyone because Chesley Hamilton, okay, is principled in all of his doings. So I could say that to you, Miss Henry, okay? But no one has ever given me a penny, or no one has ever hired me or engaged me in being a political strategist for the Labour Party. Okay?
All right. Thanks, Ms. Hamilton. We go back to the phone lines. Caller, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Abel?
Yes.
DuPont again. Quickly. I agree with a lot of the things Chesley mentioned, and I want people not to get frustrated or complex or become complicated with Chesley because it might appear like he on another side. I don't want us to deal with him like that. What makes me feel a little discomforted with what Chesley is saying, Chesley saying things as if they are happening. They are not happening. And when it comes to an election, I want to ask Chesley if he believes Carlton DuPont will live in this country and see Timothy Harris them doing Marcella and Conway and all of them, all kind of thing in this election, and I don't come and condemn them, well, he doesn't know me. And if he thinks that he could say something and they will come and lock him up and take him across the station and I wouldn't even come and pay a lawyer to defend him, even though he's a lawyer, he wrong. He not going right. But come and ask Chesley something now about mistakes. He might have made a mistake like Watley voting for unity last time, but you shouldn't make a mistake over again. Come and ask Chesley something now, Mr. Abel. I want to ask him if Douglas, who's trying to be Prime Minister again in St. Kitts, if he has made mistakes, roughly how many he think he would have made, and if he had ever asked forgiveness for any of his mistakes. I go on for people.
Thanks for that, Mr. DuPont, and I like the way that you have put it, and this is my answer to that. When I go to court and I said to the when I said to the judge, my lord, my client has come here and pleaded guilty, and he come before you for sentencing. He's a first-time offender, and I want you to give him an opportunity to amend his ways, not to send him to jail or something like that, because he has come to the court, accepted wrong, accepted his responsibility, and he's asking the court to temper justice with mercy. I go there because not even about the client, because I, Chesley Hamilton, believe in second chances and in false starts. Okay? Timothy Harris, who spent 18 of 20 years with Denzel Douglas, came and said he did wrong, and he was wrong to do most and many things, and he found salvation on the road to the Damascus, and he wanted an opportunity to turn his ways and do right. I am saying that he had that opportunity and squandered it. So if I now say to you that Denzel Douglas, first time around for 20 years, did wrong, okay? And we could debate what was wrong or what was not wrong about Denzel Douglas. We could go into those specifics, and I could engage you on any one of them, from the SIDF fund, from land for debt swap, from running up the national debt, from taking out the passport, the name in the passport, or a place of birth, any of those things. I could debate all of it with you in terms of specific. But the issue is, should I give Denzel Douglas the opportunity to have a second chance at a turn in his ways and to do right while in office? I said to you, I believe in the principle of second chances. I have not given Denzel Douglas a second chance, but I have given Timothy a second chance. So therefore, what is wrong with my principle? Tell me, DuPont. You tell me. I know you're a man of wisdom. You're a man who read your Bible. You are a Christian-minded person. Even the sinner, God has given an opportunity for to amend their ways and to repent and to be redeemed. So therefore, you tell me what is wrong with my principle, and then I will govern myself accordingly, Mr. DuPont.
Okay, we don't have any callers right now, but good. I just want to ask a quick question.
Certainly.
We're close to election, just about 2 weeks out. Do you think, or are you in support of us having debates between the representatives running for office during this period?
I am always for good and healthy debate. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in debate. I'm here because I don't mind any questions, whether they get personal or not. And Ms. What's her name? That call in, my good friend.
Miss Henry.
Miss Henry, I don't take anything you said to me personal. If you put yourself in the political arena, you must be able to take political jabs. I've never sued anyone for anything they said to me, to or about me in the political arena. You cannot be a fireman and fail fire. You cannot be a soldier and fail and be afraid of gunfire. You cannot be a problem solver and be afraid of problems. And I hold myself out to be a problem solver, not one who creates problem. I try to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Okay, we have a caller. Caller, good afternoon. Caller, good afternoon.
I'm not hearing the person.
Mr. Abel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too.
And good afternoon, Mr. Hamilton.
Good afternoon.
My logo sign maker from Montserrat.
Yes, go ahead.
What part of Montserrat, may I ask?
Davy Hill, Montserrat.
Okay, I know Salem and St. Peter's and St. John's. I already know the north side better than the other sides.
Well, you mix up the north and the south together just now.
No, Salem.
St. John's is in the north.
St. John's is in the north, but what about Salem and St. Peter's?
That in the south.
The south, no. But that wasn't heading towards the north in terms of St. John's once ago?
Well, Salem would have been the central then.
Ah, okay. That's what I'm talking about, because I lived in St. Peter's. You know, Salem School was there. We used to have to move from St. Peter's to Salem and then catch the bus, and every day I reach school late, even though I left home before 7 o'clock.
Right.
Continue.
But Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
The people of Montserrat was looking forward for Inside the News with you and Miss Henry and the star of the show, Mr. Oh, no, let me call it Doctor. Ellen Barrow.
Oh.
But it seems like this wouldn't happen this time around.
Why? Yeah, every Saturday is total lockdown there. So unless you get a media pass, you can't even come and debate the issues in that kind of way. So
anyway, let me give my piece. Let me give my piece on the whole situation. And make a talk, because my intention I forget to heaven. So I mean I will compromise myself for nobody.
Great.
Because mankind still have to stand before the throne, just like me. And if me compromise myself for somebody, they might just make it in, and then me make it. Then me make it out.
Wonderful.
Because me compromise myself for them, so me go talk here as free can be today.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday last Wednesday night on the mark, it was Alexis and okay, let me deal with Alexis. Alexis is a friend of Montserrat, I will love him. So, you know, me not really hit for hard. But he said something. He said that the state of emergency, he said that Parliament dissolves. So since Parliament dissolves, you have to, it's a must, that the election has to call the 90 days.
Yes.
That me sound wrong. So, me call him, me say, Alexis, you say something wrong, you know. You talk upon normality, normal circumstances. But you know, a state of emergency. When you're in a state of emergency, you can't say it has to. Me even make one suggestion. Me say, Alex, suppose the COVID surge. What you gonna do? He said, well, I'm not preparing to go down that road and so. And then me say, okay, according to how Alex is talk, and then me hear the Prime Minister come now and do the date. Then me don't go and talk. So he talk so confident.
Stick a pin.
When you know stay, huh?
Stick a pin. I agree with.
Okay,
I agree.
let me listen after here.
No. Finish what you were saying then. Finish what you were saying then.
Okay. Because I'm on sell maybe, right?
Finish what you were saying. Yeah. Finish what you were saying.
Right. So me say, then Alex is in a me budge for change. And me say, okay. Anyway, me come back on Ian Patches show. My friend, I mean, I was time for me can just me want to see Patches get back in power. And at the same time, me don't want to see no one-party state. And if me may run, if me no, me talk about me no, me run for election and me gun party, and me recognize that me strong, and me look like me make one sweep, me don't run one candidate shot, just to make sure one opposition of the house. That's how me think. But I don't have to do that. This is how me think. So, me say, my friend Patches, when history go right, this year have to go down the history. St. Kitts have to go down the history of the first country not under one state of emergency. I got one election. But I feel one little vibes come to the phone because I'm very sensitive of things. And I say, okay, I'm not going to push nothing else. But now that I get the chance to talk, this is not right thing. It is not right. And one state of emergency. You can't get one election. Number one, how are you dealing with election? House to house. And one state, this is how you go around. How much people listen to media? How much people think your house to house are the biggest thing now an election. And in a state of emergency, can you do these things? You are in a state of emergency. This is not one normal election, and the truth about it, the state of emergency is supposed to lift. And if you are under the state of emergency, no election is supposed to be. Who bets? Too sorry. That's a mine opinion, and I'm going to leave it right there. Okay then.
I wouldn't say that Alexis Jeffers was wrong. He just didn't give you the whole story. You could have an election during a state of emergency. Parliamentary elections can be held in 90 days, is due to be held in 90 days after the House dissolved. But for one clause, if Her Majesty is at war, not if there is a national disaster, or if there is, a pandemic or anything like that. So during those two aspects of it, where there is a health emergency or where there is a natural disaster, you can still have the election. Even if tomorrow a hurricane comes and there is a natural disaster, you will have certain things that can cause the election to be postponed in a sense. The House that was dissolved could come back to deal with certain things, and then the House would then become dissolved again on nomination day. Where the Constitution is a bit vague is between nomination day and election day. That's where it's a bit vague, but I hope that common sense and principles would guide our behavior. But between nomination day and election day, if something happened, whether it's an outbreak, a natural disaster, something like that happened between there, that is the only what I would say vague area of our Constitution. But what happens between now and nomination day and so on is well articulated within the ambits and the parameters of the Constitution.
Well,
but yes, an election must be held within 90 days of the dissolution of parliamentary elections must be held within 90 days of the dissolution of Parliament.
Well, that was a question somebody had asked. Is there anything in the legislation, I don't have the Constitution before me, but is there anything within the state of emergency or within the legislation that indicates that if the elections are announced June 5th and we reach that stage of an emergency, that is, we see increased cases of COVID-19, that the date can actually be pushed back?
Like I said, you don't want to answer certain questions without specific facts. But the timeline is important. We are in a situation where the Constitution does allow for Parliament to be called back to deal with an emergency that occurs when an election is called or when the House has been dissolved. So even though the House is dissolved, the Constitution allows for Parliament to be recalled. And the Parliament that's done dissolved is the one that is called back. So therefore, no representative for constituency number 6 would be called back because there were none when Parliament was dissolved. So the Parliament which stood dissolved is the Parliament that will be called back. But once nomination day comes, I stand to be corrected, but there is not a provision to call back Parliament to deal with anything once nomination day has arrived. In other words, under those circumstances, you have to try your utmost to still have an election. And then that elected government, under whatever circumstances, is the one that will have to choose the executive and carry on the affairs of state.
Okay, we'll take a break now and acknowledge our partners.
Free data with your top up. Enjoy your 1 gigabyte weekend data bonus when you top up today, $25 or more. Share all your fun times at home with your loved ones and stay entertained streaming your favorite online content on the best LTE network. Stay safe and stay connected with Flow. Top up $25 or more today and get 1 gigabyte of data free. Conditions apply.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horseman's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss it. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Why not stay in? Turn off the alarm clock and sleep some more on your perfect mattress from Quartz. For the widest range of mattresses from the world's best brands, the best value guaranteed. Shop today and let our sleep experts help you to decide on the best option to suit your needs. At Quartz, we don't just sell mattresses, we're offering you the best night's sleep. So, sleep in a little on your new mattress from Quartz. Quartz, bringing value home.
And welcome back. We go straight to the phone lines. Caller, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, me again. Mr. Appleton, and to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Here's the issue that I have, that you hear all the time. Because I really don't see why, when a government is in power, they don't free up the community centers. Because it's not going to take anything from the government if you allow the opposition to use the centers. I can't figure it out. And then if you think that by not allowing the opposition to use the stations, the radio station, I still going to be able to tune in to all the other stations that they will use. I mean, I cannot understand why, when a government is in power, a new government is in power, they refuse to allow the opposition to use the radio station. I'm hearing in the case of this one that they owe money. How much money they owe, so I really don't know. But every time it's Hamilton, you have an election, and the party win, they refuse the opposition to use the radio station, and they refuse the opposition to use the community centers and them. And I really don't see the reason, because no matter what you do, when you allow them to, by not allowing them to use these facilities, they just turn people away from you. Yeah. And you hear it all the time. Free up the station, they do this and that, give the opposition. But when they get in power now, they're doing the same blooming thing. And I think that shouldn't be right. It's not going to affect which way I can vote, because I know how you're going to vote. But I'm simply saying that it's wrong, is wrong, is wrong. Thank you.
I hate the hypocrisy. Like I said to you, I fight and I demonstrated against these things. I have never been in office, so I don't know what it is about office that cause good thinking, reasonable people, when they get power, to all of a sudden change their minds or their situation. I've never been there, so I really don't know what it is. But I'm saying to you, those are the things I fought for. I fought against those things and really meant them. And to see people reach into office, guys who I would have died or gave my life for, to reach into office and all of a sudden forget the freedom of information, forget integrity in public life, forget all of these good governance principles. I told them, you guys want to go down Church Street with these sort of things, please go. I'm not going with you, because I know I need to have my guru, my imam, my priest, my bishop, my people to help me in terms of morality and seeking counsel and guidance. I don't hold myself up to be the most virtuous man alive. So therefore, when things like that happen, I need spiritual guidance, I need moral help, I need all of those things. So therefore, I don't hold myself out to be better than anybody when it comes to those sort of things. So therefore, I say, you want to go down and put those sort of things in place and go down Church Street, please go. I'm not going with you. And just in case you think I was making I was bluffing, I held on to my Canadian passport and said, listen to me, I do not want no government job. I ain't want no government position. But put those things in place. Be people of your word. Your word must be your bond. And I wish you guys well. But when you go there now and you don't do it, I would be the first to tell you, you're not a person of your word. And therefore, if your word is not your bond, how can I trust you? Trust but verify. I trust you. When time comes for verification, the proof is in the pudding, and you have not lived up to your word.
Well, there you had it, Mr. Hamilton responding to that caller. Well, we'll go back to the phone lines. Caller, good afternoon. Caller?
Yes. Mr. Abel, me back. Mr. Hamilton.
Yes.
Okay, so the Constitution writes only the act of war.
Yes, that's the exemption. That's the caveat. That's the exemption. That's the footnote. War. And war allows you to adjourn the election for 12 months, up to 12 months at a time.
Right.
But no more than 5 years. So every time you need to renew it, you could renew it for another year and postpone it for another year and another year and another year, but you can't go for more than 5 years.
Right. We got basically the same thing. But listen to this here.
Mm-hmm.
When that the right, nobody miss a COVID. Right or wrong?
Well, yes and no, but it made provision for COVID, Because it, right, because the section C, which deals with that's calamities, that's the word I've been looking for calamities and so on. Subsection C covers things like COVID. But and then subsection B deals with natural disaster. But A, which is the only exemption, deals with war, right? Okay. So that is the only exemption for the postponement of parliamentary elections. And you must see, you will see why. Because if somebody attacking Montserrat, you don't need you need no two sides. You need every Montserratians to come and take up arms to defend Montserrat.
Exactly. Good. But listen to this, Mr. Hamilton. COVID, like it bigger than
war. That's the way they're treating it, and it's wrong.
Listen to me. COVID come on the scene. If you even got a brother, one sister, or if you don't even live with your mother, you can't visit it.
Without you could risk lock up, and you could risk breaking the law.
Risk by vacation and lock you up.
Okay.
No, they said no visiting. So listen to me. This year, our act, even big. The matter of fact, you even hear the Prime Minister say we are war.
Okay.
Right or wrong?
But that is the pretext that they came under when they wanted the state of emergency. They came under all three limbs of the legislation.
This our act of war, and this war is so serious that you can't even see your enemy.
Yeah.
So the point about it, me said, the point that me draw is that when you read the Constitution saying that Parliament dissolved in 90 days, that are normal circumstances. But now you're under one emergency. I want completely different. I mean, the law one very, very technical thing for thing, because you see, if everything you have to run back to Parliament for go do one la for suit this and for suit this, you not ever done anyway. But at the least, common sense only tell you are under a state of emergency. And still a call on election. You got people now where supposed to even go house to house and do your campaign in the car. That's the strength in a house to house. All I need is something, the house to house are a more convincing thing more than anything else. And you understand? So you can't do that then more. This cannot be in right circumstances. Okay then.
Yes, you cannot canvass, but under chapter 2 of the Constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis, right, which deals with fundamental rights and freedoms, right? Section 3, which deals with fundamental rights and freedoms. Section 4 deals with the protection of the right to life. I ain't even going to debate that one there, because I tell you, everything in chapter 2 is suspended. Now 5 deals with the protection of the right to personal liberty. Section 6 deals with the protection from, listen to this one here, slavery and forced labor. Now, if that protection is suspended, you're telling me that the government could force me to work right now and ain't pay me? Well, I mean, Chesley doesn't work on a pay, so maybe that's a bad example. But the protection against slavery and forced labor. Section 7 deals with the protection from inhumane treatment, police brutality, torture, inhumane treatment. Suspended under a state of emergency. A lot of people don't know what a state of emergency is, and nobody wanted to explain to you during normal times because we're dealing with this pandemic and the country was willing to lend itself to support so that we could defeat this thing. All hands on deck. Nobody wanted to tell you, and nobody wanted to create no anxiety at the time. But to try to conduct an election where this is the adversarial system, where we have different sides, where we bring our ideas for contest and to compete within a free and democratic society, while these rights, fundamental rights and freedoms are suspended, is wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. 8, as I said to you, the protection from the deprivation of property, your own property, your money, your land, your house, your vehicle. You have a protection to those things that government can't just do any willy-nilly and deal with it. The executive is in charge and can deal and determine. If they want to make your property a police station tomorrow, they could commandeer it. They make a regulation and order and do so. They need your vehicle to do anything. They're going to go into parliament to do it. The governor general in council, meaning the cabinet, can make the necessary regulations, have them put it in the gazette, and they can make that happen. That is the state of affairs, of a state of emergency. That is why these laws, which are fundamental to a democracy, these individual rights and freedoms, these fundamental rights and freedoms, they are suspended by a state of emergency. And that is why the executive, the ministers, the authorities, the heads and the directors and so on, the authorized authorities within the legislature can do most and many things. They are free and at large. Well, all of us must govern ourselves accordingly because our fundamental rights under the Constitution are suspended. Ladies and gentlemen, I ain't come here because somebody paid me to come here. I came here to let my conscience be my guide. And I prayed before I came. And I asked God to let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For God is with me, rather than a staff, comfort me. Because Chesley Hamilton lift up his eyes unto the hills from whence cometh his help. My help ain't come from man. My help cometh from the Lord which made heaven and earth. You understand me? I'm a praying man. I'm a spiritual man. And I ask God every day for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I say the prayer of Solomon at all times. Okay? And all I'm simply saying to you, that my conscience cannot allow me to have an education, as some people say, a learning on these kind of matters and not share them with the population. Because silent sometimes might not be consent, but silent condones. And if there is a silent majority allowing these abuses, I, Chesley Hamilton, is willing to be a majority of one. A majority of one. That this is wrong, wrong, wrong. Wrong in your sight. There was a politician who said, my hands are clean before God and man. This is wrong before and in the sight of man and woman, and it should be wrong in the sight of God as well. It is wrong, and wrong must be called out. Wrong must be called out. Timothy Harris will say, if I perish, let me perish, but truth must be told. Well, I'm speaking truth to power. You are wrong. And go back to Parliament, call back Parliament, and do the right thing, and lift the state of emergency, set the ground rules on the curve it in terms of what you can do to conduct an election that is free and fair and free from fair, and could be reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society, which we are, and hold ourselves out to be. That's all I ask of you. I don't have to have a horse in the race. I will live under any government. I survived 20 years of labor. You understand? I have been 5 years under unity. And if I have to live another 15 under unity, trust me, Chesley Hamilton, as Douglas Watley said, is like Yellow Dad. I describe myself more like Dandelion, but he said like Yellow Dad. You understand? I will survive. You understand? But I, like Jimmy Cliff have said, I'd rather be buried than live like a puppet or a slave. I'd rather be buried in a grave than live like a puppet or a slave. And if you're telling me that my fundamental right against slavery and forced labor is suspended while we go through an election period, and that even if I speak the truth in an oral statement, under the regulations it says the statement could be true. It does not have to be false. Section 17 of the regulation says that. And matters prejudicial to safety, public order, public morality. The statement could be true. They say the truth shall set you free. If I speak the truth, I could still end up in jeopardy because of the state of emergency. That can't be right. We can't have a debate with that. When one side have the right to determine who get arrested and who get detained and who is controlled, who can be deported. My movement, I go on further. It says in 10, the protection to secure protection of the law, right? Not even the law, the security of the law, I could call upon and say, well, the law said this or the law said that. Because I am saying to you, my legal rights are suspended. So I can't even call upon the protection of the law. Okay? I am saying to you, the protection and the freedom of conscience, the protection of and my freedom of expression. Okay? All of those are suspended. I go further. The protection and the freedom of assembly and association. Who I associate myself with. Who I assemble with. All of these things. All of those protections under chapter 2 of the Constitution, the highest law in the land, are suspended during a state of emergency. Because the chapter starts out, by saying, protection of fundamental rights and freedom. It says, the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. No, that is chapter 1. Right? It basically speaks that the fundamental rights and freedom applies to this chapter. And it means chapter 2. Chapter 2. Okay? Those are what we are facing and looking at. Are there any callers waiting?
Well, we're kind of over time.
Oh, we're over time. I want to thank you for having me and thank WinFM for giving me this opportunity to say these few words, because I believe in democracy. I believe in this country. I believe I want to live in the freest country on earth, or land of beauty. We have a history. We have been through something like a state of emergency in 1967, and the framers of our Constitution were guided by those events when they put in place Section 16, 17, and 18 to deal with Section 19 of the Constitution. And trust me, the Emergency Powers Act is wider and vast. As a lawyer, it scares me to be operating in a state of emergency during an election. Okay? And I want people to know and to understand that if we believe in a democracy calls for us to have two sides debating and let the better man or woman win. We have been through things like this. We've been through wars. I'll tell you, during World War I, just after there, that women were given the right to vote. You know why? Because we needed all hands on deck. And that is when women began to man the machinery and the manufacturing of planes and so on. So therefore, because of that, they were given the right to vote. And you have things like the Persons Act, where women were said to become full and complete person and given the right to vote and all of those sort of things. It is after a war like the Civil War that black people were given the freedom because we wanted all hands on deck. So therefore the white men realized that they alone couldn't fight. So they wanted black people to help them fight. Black men, not black women, but black men. So it's after wars. You see, when war come and they realize that they are threatened and the state and the power and privilege is threatened, they want all hands on deck. Well, that is why we have all hands on deck during times of public emergency, and we suspend the debate about different sides. Well, if we want to know who's going to govern us for the next 5 years, let us do the right thing. Lift the state of emergency, and let us have free and fair elections, and elections that are free from fear. I ask nothing else, and I ask everyone in this country to join me and make sure that that be the way we go forward. If we condone this kind of behavior, well, we are condoning that people can continue to abuse their privilege, their rights and their privilege while in office at our peril and to our detriment. I thank you for this
All right,
thing.
thanks, Mr. Hamilton. There you had it. That was Voices for Today. I was your host, Jermine Abel. Do join us again tomorrow for another edition of WinFM's Voices program.
WINN is 98.9.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that.